Plug-and-play consoles that come bundled with a set of pre-loaded games have been a thing for quite some time, but Nintendo popularized them among the industry's leading players with the release of the NES Classic in November 2016. As the name suggests, this was a miniature replica of the original NES. It came packed with 30 of the console's greatest games, the software that helped define the system. We're talking Super Mario Bros. 1, 2, and 3, the original Legend of Zelda, Metroid, Kirby, Castlevania, Mega Man, and Final Fantasy. All and more were included in the package. The NES Classic also came with modern amenities. It had USB controllers, an HDMI port, it output at 720p 60Hz, and it supported save states for all games, making them more approachable for contemporary audiences. It retailed for $60 US with some other currencies on screen as well, and lasted for 2 years before it was discontinued. All told, the NES Classic sold about 3.6 million units. Many other such mini consoles followed. There was the Super Nintendo in 2017, the PlayStation 1 in 2018, and the Sega Genesis/Mega Drive in 2019. In fact, other more obscure console manufacturers jumped in on the bandwagon as well. The Commodore 64 or C64 Mini released in 2018, and the TurboGrafx 16 or PC Engine Mini released in 2020. They certainly ran the gambit in terms of overall quality, but it doesn't look like these systems are done just yet, as Sega is set to launch the Genesis/Mega Drive Mini 2 in October 2022. One console manufacturer that never joined in on the mini console craze is Microsoft/Xbox. There are fairly obvious reasons as to why. First of all, Xbox probably isn't old or retro enough to warrant such a unit. Second, and more important, it doesn't make much, if any, sense. The One and Series line are already backwards compatible with many of the original Xbox's most iconic games, and they are also available on Game Pass. I doubt that Microsoft has seriously considered this idea, and I totally get that. But that's not going to stop me from exploring what a potential Xbox Mini might look like. The hardware is obvious, an exact replica of the original source material, just scaled down. It would have an HDMI port and output at 60Hz 720p, or 1080, depending on whatever makes more sense for the unit. A lot of these games have built-in saves, so there's no need for save states for most of them. The decision on which controller model to use is a bit more dicey. Outside of Japan, the console launched with a big, beefy controller nicknamed the Duke. It served as the primary input device from 2001 to 2002 until it was replaced by the smaller, redesigned Controller S variant. At the time, folks heavily criticized the Duke for being obnoxiously large, but as the years have gone by, it's garnered a cult following. Ultimately though, I think the standard console should launch with 2 Controller S models because the S is still generally regarded as the better and more comfortable of the two. The Duke should still be sold as an optional accessory, and perhaps there can be special editions that come packed with 1 or 2 Dukes. The Xbox Mini would come packed with 20 preloaded games. This would be the software considered the console's best and most defining. It would retail for anywhere between $60 to $80. I've got the equivalents of other currencies on screen now. This is the exchange rate as of September 10th, 2022. Obviously, this is less games than previous mini consoles. The NES had 30, the Genesis had 42, and the Genesis 2 is set to have over 60. But Xbox games are bigger and more complex than these 8 and 16-bit titles. In terms of pricing, all in dollars US, the NES sold for $60, the Genesis for $80, and the PlayStation for $100. So the $60 to $80 price range operates within these margins. But is that realistic, or would Microsoft have to retail this for even more? I'm certainly hoping $60 to $80 is reasonable. At any rate, the following is the 20 games I think are worthy of inclusion in the prospective Xbox Mini. Let's watch the sizzle reel first, and then we'll discuss some of my choices. The games on display are organized in chronological order based on release date. The two Halo games obviously have to be here. One thing I would like to say is that they hold up surprisingly well today. I know I certainly have nostalgia and bias for them, but Combat Evolved is over 20 years old now and is still perfectly playable. I think that's amazing. These two set the bar and defined what a console FPS should look and play like, and contemporary shooters are still iterating and building upon the foundation that these two helped set. Fusion Frenzy is an interesting one, but I think it also must be here. It's a first-party game and was a launch title for the Xbox. It's a 4-player party game very much in the vein of Mario Party and is good, casual, oddball fun. The Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind was one of the original Xbox's best-selling pieces of software, but it's really dated now. Even its successor, Oblivion, has been showing its age for quite some time, and Skyrim is starting to look and feel like a decade-plus-year-old game. I would therefore personally like to see some quality of life improvements and tweaks to help make Morrowind more approachable for modern audiences, but it set the standard for and identity of modern Elder Scrolls games and absolutely deserves to be included. Sega supported the original Xbox quite well with exclusive content after it left the hardware business with the discontinuation of the Dreamcast. I chose two of their games for this set. The first is Jet Set Radio Future, a direct sequel to Jet Set Radio or Jet Grind Radio on the Dreamcast. I'm hoping none of you disagree with this choice. It's a no-brainer to me, although there is more likely licensing issues with the soundtrack that will need to be resolved or otherwise ironed out. I could concede on Panzer Dragoon Orta though. This is a later installment in the Panzer Dragoon series, which was one of the Saturn's flagship franchises. It has a very high Metacritic score and is considered a must-play by that website for what it's worth. Conquer Live and Reloaded might be an odd choice. The single-player campaign is a simple remaster from Bad Fur Day on the Nintendo 64, though the multiplayer mode is exclusive to the Xbox. It's quite fleshed out too. It has soldier classes and various game modes such as death matches and capture the flag. To me, this is enough to warrant inclusion in the set of 20 games, but I'm open to disagreement. The biggest source of insecurity I have for my list is the overabundance of Star Wars games. I have 4 of them, 1/5 of the offerings for my prospective Xbox Mini. This means if a customer is not a Star Wars fan, the library is immediately cut down to a slim 16. I think the easiest and most logical fix would be to remove one of the 2 Knights of the Old Republic games. If I had to choose, I'd say get rid of KOTOR 2 and replace it with a fighting game, because I've got only one of those in this set, Dead or Alive 3. However, I'm not a fighting game kind of guy outside of Smash Bros, so I don't know what I would choose to replace KOTOR 2. Do you all agree with that? Are there too many Star Wars games in this set? Should we remove KOTOR 2, and should we replace it with another fighting game to supplement Dead or Alive 3? It was also difficult for me to pick just one title from a franchise. Specifically, I'm referring to GTA and Battlefront. I think GTA, especially the earlier games, are more at home on the PlayStation. They released first on the PS2 with later releases on the Xbox. But I think the franchise has to be represented here. As for which game to include, I went with San Andreas, but I'm certainly open to opposing viewpoints. I'm not exactly a GTA guy, but from my admittedly limited understanding, San Andreas seems to be the one held in the highest regard vis-a-vis GTA 3 and Vice City. As for Battlefront, I went with the second entry. The first game has its fans for sure, and even outsold the sequel, but I believe Battlefront 2 is generally considered the more all-around better package. With all that said, this has been my proposal for the Xbox Mini. Despite some issues on the periphery, I'm fairly happy with the overall selection. There's a good amount of variety, something for everyone: shooters, racing games, party and fighting games, platformers, and RPGs. More important, I think this set of software would give the potential customer a very good and accurate sense of the original Xbox's identity and personality, as well as what owning one was like back in the day. But of course, the massive elephant in the room is that this product probably makes very little sense, as we discussed earlier. But perhaps the low price point, coupled with the strong selection of titles on hand and the small, inoffensive form factor of the unit itself, could be enough to entice, say, longtime Nintendo and Sony fans to check this thing out. Maybe they could see how cool the original Xbox was, and maybe this could inspire them to go on to check out some of Xbox's more modern offerings, like Forza Horizon 5, Psychonauts 2, Halo Infinite, Starfield, and the upcoming Fable entry. Or this could be a complete dud with those folks and only weirdos like me would buy it. That's a strong possibility. Regardless, thanks everyone for watching, and until next time, take care.